Hi guys, tonight we're stepping into the entire history of olive oil, the liquid that powered ancient empires, softened tired hands, filled lamps with honey-coloured light, and somehow made a wrinkled little fruit more important than many kings would like to admit. Imagine you're standing at the edge of a rocky hillside just before dawn. The air is cool, the soil smells dry, mineral, and faintly green. Silver leaves tremble above you, whispering in the early wind like tiny coins being counted by someone very patient. How did this bitter fruit become food, medicine, fuel, perfume, tax payment, sacred offering, and imperial business? How did something so quiet travel farther than armies and last longer than palaces? So, before you settle into the story, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, and tell us in the comments where you're listening from, and what your local time is right now. Maybe it is midnight, maybe it is raining, maybe your kitchen has a bottle of olive oil waiting in the dark. Now, dim the lights, and you step into a world where the first olive trees do not belong to anyone yet. You're walking through the eastern Mediterranean many thousands of years ago, long before neat terraces, stone presses, painted storage jars, and smug little labels promising extra virgin. The landscape is rough and open. Hills rise in pale brown folds. Wild grasses brush your ankles. Somewhere nearby, goats complain softly because goats have always had opinions. The sun has not fully climbed, but already you can feel warmth gathering on the stones beneath your sandals. Here, the olive is not yet a symbol of peace or wisdom or sophisticated dinner parties. It is a stubborn tree, twisted and resilient, growing where other plants give up and go home. Its trunk looks old even when it is young, as if it has already heard too many human plans. Its leaves are narrow and silver green, flashing when the breeze turns them. Its fruit is small, firm, and deeply bitter if you bite it raw. You try one, because of course you do, and immediately regret your confidence. Your tongue tightens. Your mouth goes dry. The olive is not a friendly fruit at first meeting. It does not flatter you. It makes you work. And this really is where the story begins, not with luxury, but with effort. Early people learned that olives could not simply be plucked and eaten like figs or grapes. They needed patience. They needed soaking, curing, pressing, storing. The reward was not obvious at first. A crushed olive makes a paste that smells sharp and grassy, almost peppery. The skins stain your fingers, the pits scrape against stone. But if you keep grinding, if you press the paste, if you let the liquid settle, something remarkable rises. Oil, smooth, golden green, glowing even in a clay bowl. You dip a fingertip into it. It coats your skin at once, soft and slippery, with a faint warmth that seems to belong to sunlight itself. You smell crushed leaves, green fruit, dust, and a little bitterness. Nothing dramatic happens. No trumpet sounds. No emperor appears with a contract. But you are holding one of the most useful substances humans will ever learn to make. Mainstream history places the domestication of the olive in the eastern Mediterranean, especially around the Levant, thousands of years before the great classical civilizations. People cultivated olive trees by selecting useful varieties, taking cuttings, grafting branches, and slowly shaping groves over generations. The process was not quick. Olive trees grow slowly, and they ask you to think like someone who trusts the future. Planting one is almost an act of stubborn optimism. You may not be the person who enjoys its fullest harvest. Your children might. Their children might. The tree stands there, quietly collecting years. So you find yourself among early farmers who are learning to live with time in a different way. Grain gives a seasonal rhythm. Sheep and goats move with pasture. But olives ask for permanence. They encourage people to stay, to tend, to prune, to remember which tree gives good fruit and which one is being dramatic for no useful reason. Around these groves, small communities become more settled. Paths are worn between houses, fields, wells, and storage spaces, hands become skilled at picking without damaging branches. Baskets are woven for harvest. Stones are chosen for crushing. The soundscape is gentle but busy. You hear the dry click of olives dropping into a basket. You hear birds moving in the branches. Someone laughs softly. A child is told not to eat the raw fruit, and does anyway, because history is also the story of children ignoring sensible advice. Farther away, a grinding stone turns against another stone, making a low, patient rasp. It is the kind of sound that could lull you if your shoulders were not already tired from work. Harvest time feels both practical and ceremonial. People spread cloths or mats below the trees. They comb the branches with fingers or simple tools. The olives fall in little tapping showers. Some are green, sharp, and firm. Others have darkened toward purple or black, richer with oil. The air smells of leaves, dust, sweat, and fruit beginning to bruise. Your palms grow sticky. The basket presses into your hip. There is no romance in the aching back. Naturally. History likes to look elegant from a museum shelf, but on the ground it usually involves someone being sore. Once gathered, the olives must be crushed soon, before they spoil. You kneel near a stone basin and watch the fruit become paste. It is messy, ordinary, and faintly magical. The paste is pressed through woven mats, perhaps with weights, perhaps with a simple lever, depending on the time and place. Liquid seeps out. Water and oil separate slowly. The oil rises, patient and shining. You skim it carefully, knowing even then that this is not just food. This is storage. This is light. This is trade. This is a way to carry the energy of a tree across months and miles. And that is the quiet genius of olive oil. It keeps, in a world without electric light, refrigeration, or easy transport, a stable, useful oil is almost a miracle. It can be eaten with bread or vegetables. It can preserve foods. It can soothe skin cracked by weather. It can burn in a lamp, giving a small steady flame after sunset. You imagine a room at night, walls made of mud brick or stone, shadows trembling as a little lamp drinks oil through a wick. The flame is not bright by modern standard, but it changes everything. It stretches the day. It lets people speak, mend, weave, pray, and worry after dark. Very generous of the olive, really, considering how rude its raw fruit was. There is a scholarly uncertainty here, soft but important. Researchers still debate exactly when and where humans first domesticated the olive, because wild and cultivated olives can be difficult to distinguish in ancient remains. A charred pit, a pollen sample, a residue in pottery. Each gives a clue, but rarely a complete confession. Some evidence points strongly toward early cultivation in the Levant, while other regions of the Mediterranean developed their own long relationships with the tree. The olive does not hand historians a signed document. It leaves traces, and scholars lean close to read them. You keep moving through this early landscape, and you begin to understand why the tree invited myth. It is hard to kill. Cut it back, and new shoots may rise from the old root. Drought comes, and the olive endures with narrow leaves and deep patience. Its wood burns hot. Its fruit, once mastered, gives richness. Its oil gleams like captured daylight. Even before written legends turn olive trees into gifts from gods. You can feel why people might treat them with respect. A quirky little tidbit waits among these beginnings. In some ancient and later folk traditions, people believed olive trees disliked loud boasting or harsh treatment, as if the tree itself had standards. It is not science, of course, but you can see how such an idea grows. When a crop takes years to reward you, when careless pruning can damage harvests, when patience matters more than swagger, people begin to speak of the tree as if it listens. And honestly, if any tree would judge you quietly, it might be the olive. You pass a small dwelling where oil is being stored in clay jars. The jars are cool to the touch, their surfaces rough beneath your fingers. Some are sealed carefully to protect the contents. Oil can absorb odours and suffer from heat, light, and air, even if ancient people described it in their own practical language rather than modern chemistry. They learned through experience. Keep it shaded. Keep it sealed. Keep it away from smoke, damp, and whatever odd thing your neighbour has decided to ferment this week. The first pressings would not have been uniform or perfectly clean by modern standards. Some oil might be thick and cloudy, some might taste fiercely bitter, some might be used for cooking, while lower grade served lamps or skin care. But classification came later. At this early stage, usefulness mattered most. You're not judging aroma notes like a professional taster, murmuring about artichoke, almond, and cut grass. You're grateful that the lamp works. You're grateful that bread dipped in oil feels more filling. You're grateful that a cracked heel can be rubbed with something soothing before sleep. The world around you is still small in scale, but already connected. A neighbour has a better tree. Someone else knows a better way to crush the fruit. A family down the path has jars that do not leak. Knowledge travels by marriage, migration, trade, imitation, and the ancient human habit of watching someone else do something useful and pretending you invented it independently. Little by little, olive oil moves from household craft toward regional importance. You can sense the future gathering, though no one here can see it clearly. One day, oil will move in massive jars across sea lanes. Palaces will count it. Athletes will shine with it. Priests will bless with it. Doctors will recommend it for an impressive number of complaints, some reasonable, some optimistic, some very ancient medical text energy. Empires will tax it, ship it, fake it, fight over the lands that produce it, and brag about the groves under their control. But for now, the story stays close to the hands. A woman lifts a clay bowl and watches the oil catch the morning light. An older man checks the press and grunts in a way that could mean approval or simply knees. Children run between trees, raising dust. A dog sleeps where it is least helpful. The breeze carries the smell of crushed olives, smoke from a small fire, and dry herbs warming on the slope. You feel the atmosphere settle around you, quiet labour and shared skill, and a slow confidence that this tree is worth the waiting. You reach out and touch the bark of an olive tree. It is ridged, cool in the shaded grooves, warm where the sun has found it. The trunk twists upward as though time itself has turned it by hand. Above you, leaves flicker silver and green. Beneath you, roots grip poor soil and stone. Around you, people are beginning a relationship that will reshape economies, kitchens, rituals, and nights full of lamplight. The first olive oil is not yet an empire. 'Tis a discovery repeated in patient gestures. Pick, crush, press, skim, store, taste, light, heal, trade, remember. Each verb is small, but together they become a civilization's rhythm. And as evening returns to the hillside, you see the tiny flame of an oil lamp appear in a doorway. It glows softly against the dark, fed by the fruit of a tree that took years to grow and hours to press. The lamp does not roar. It does not dazzle. It simply holds back the night, one calm, golden breath at a time. You arrive on Crete in the Bronze Age, where the sea is never very far away. It glitters beyond the hills in bands of blue and silver, shifting under the wind as if someone is breathing slowly beneath the surface. The island smells of salt, warm stone, sheep's wool, crushed herbs, and smoke from cooking fires. On the slopes above the shore, olive trees stand in orderly patches, their leaves flickering in the light. They are not wild background anymore. They are part of a system now, watched, tended, measured, and turned into wealth. You walk toward a palace complex with painted walls, broad stairways, storerooms, workshops, and courtyards where footsteps echo in the heat. This is the world of Minoan Crete. famous for places such as Knossos, Phaistos, Malea, and Zagros. The buildings are not castles in the heavy medieval sense. They feel more like living centres of administration, craft, ritual, storage, and spectacle. People move in and out with baskets, jars, tools, cloth, and messages. Somewhere, a scribe sits with a clay tablet, making marks that look calm and tidy, which is honestly suspicious, because bureaucracy is rarely calm on the inside. The palace smells different from the hillside. Here the air is cooler in the storerooms, thick with clay dust, old oil, dry grain, wool, and the faint sourness of things kept too long in the dark. You pass rows of enormous storage jars, called pithoi, taller than a child and broad as a patient old uncle. Their sides are ridged, their mouths wide, their surfaces rough beneath your hand. Some may have held grain, wine, or other goods. Many held oil, the liquid that made this island valuable beyond its size. Mainstream history tells us that Minoan Crete was deeply involved in Mediterranean trade during the 2nd millennium BCE, and olive oil was one of the island's important products. It moved through palatial storage systems, appeared in administrative records, and likely served many purposes, from food and lamps to perfumes, rituals, and exchange. You can feel the practical power of it here. Oil is not simply something poured over bread. It is inventory. It is labour captured in jars. It is sunlight stored by trees, harvested by human hands, and guarded behind thick walls. You follow a worker carrying a smaller vessel from a storage room into a workshop. The floor is worn smooth in places. Light slips through openings and lands in pale rectangles. Inside, another worker prepares scented oil. This is one of Crete's elegant industries, perfumed oil, made by blending olive oil with fragrant plants and resins. Imagine the smell: coriander, sage, rose, perhaps iris or other aromatics, depending on what is available and desired. The oil becomes a carrier for scent, holding fragrance against the skin and hair. It is beauty, trade, ritual, and social display in one small container. Very efficient. Ancient luxury rarely missed a chance to be practical too. You watch as herbs are crushed, stirred, heated gently and strained. The oil thickens with scent. A woman tests it on the back of her hand. Her skin gleams. The room grows warmer, richer, almost sleepy with fragrance. Outside, the sea wind moves through the courtyards, but inside the workshop, the air is intimate and golden. You realize that olive oil has begun to move into the world of identity. It can mark rank, devotion, cleanliness, desire, and belonging. A body shining with scented oil is not just a body. It is a statement, softly glowing under the sun. The Minoans also had a writing system called Linear A, and there is the little problem, naturally, that we still cannot fully read it. It is one of history's most elegant frustrations. You see the marks on clay and want them to speak clearly, but they remain guarded. Later tablets in Linear B, used by Mycenaean Greek administrators, can be read and include records involving oil. But Linear A keeps much of Minoan life slightly veiled. Historians still argue whether some Minoan oil records show centralized palace control in the stronger sense, or whether the palaces coordinated a more flexible network of local producers, households, and elites. The jars are real, the storerooms are real, the tablets are real. The exact social machinery behind them remains just misty enough to keep scholars politely restless. You step into a courtyard where painted walls brighten the space. Frescoes show movement, colour, animals as processions, and nature alive with stylized grace. The famous Minoan eye for beauty is everywhere. Blue, red, black, white, and gold seem to hum in the sunlight. In this world, oil may be part of ritual gatherings, feasting, preparation of bodies, offerings, and lamps burning in sacred spaces. You hear a low murmur of voices, the creak of sandals, the clink of pottery, and the steady cooing of doves somewhere overhead. The atmosphere feels ceremonial without becoming stiff. Crete knows how to be graceful and busy at the same time, which is frankly a skill many modern airports have not mastered. A quirky tidbit drifts through the storerooms like dust in a shaft of light. Some Minoan oil jars so large that moving them once full would have been a miserable project, possibly requiring several people, ropes, planning, and at least one person insisting, very confidently, that they had a better way. The size of these pithoi tells you something simple and powerful. Oil was not being treated as a tiny household extra. It was stored in bulk. The palace wanted quantity. It wanted control, or at least oversight. It wanted enough oil to feed workshops, lamps, exchanges, ceremonies, and reserves. You pause beside one of the great jars and press your palm against it. The clay is cool, with grit beneath the fingertips. The jar seems silent, but it holds a whole landscape inside its shape. Groves on terraced hills, pickers in autumn light, pressing floors slick with paste, donkeys on dusty paths, potters shaping vessels from island clay, sailors lifting cargo into ships, scribes marking amounts, priests or priestesses using oil in ways you cannot fully see, merchants talking too loudly, because merchants everywhere have a talent for turning conversation into weather. The sea matters deeply here. Crete sits in a position that makes it a natural connector. Ships sail toward the Cycladic islands, mainland Greece, Cyprus, the Levant, and Egypt. You stand near a harbour and hear the hulls creak in the swell. Ropes scrape against wood. Men shout instructions. Amphorae and jars are padded, lifted, counted, and stowed. The smell is tar, fish, salt, damp rope, and oil sealed in clay. A ship's deck is not a peaceful place, but at night, when the water darkens and the stars appear, the cargo below rests in silence. Olive oil is travelling now, leaving the groves and entering networks of gift exchange, commerce, diplomacy, and desire. You imagine a small vessel of Cretan-scented oil arriving in a foreign port. Someone opens it and inhales. The scent carries not only flowers and herbs, but distance. It smells like an island across the water. It smells like refinement. It smells expensive, which has always been one of humanity's favourite smells, even when we pretend otherwise. Back inland, you visit the groves themselves. The trees grow on slopes where the soil is thin but lively with insect, wild thyme, and dry grass. The afternoon air vibrates softly with bees. Cicadas scratch their endless summer music from the branches. Your sandals slide a little on loose stones. A farmer demonstrates pruning, cutting away what weakens the tree so that fruiting branches can thrive. This is not random gardening. It is inherited knowledge. Olive cultivation requires knowing the shape of growth, the timing of harvest, the rhythm of rain, and the patience of roots. The oil produced here helps support palatial life, but it also touches ordinary routines. A small lamp is filled at dusk. A cook adds oil to a pot of lentils or greens. A child's dry skin is rubbed gently. Tools are cleaned. Wool may be treated. Bodies are anointed. A sacred object may gleam under a thin film of oil. The same substance moves from kitchen to shrine, from workshop to ship, from humble hand to elite ceremony. That flexibility is part of its power. Olive oil does not stay in one social lane. It slips, naturally. As evening settles, the palace changes mood. The hot brightness softens. Stone corridors breathe out the day's warmth. Lamps begin to glow along walls and in rooms where people still work. Their flames are small, amber, and steady, feeding on oil from groves you can almost smell through the clay. Shadows lift and lean. A scribe finishes marking a tablet and leaves it to dry. A worker seals a jar. Somewhere, someone sings under their breath while sweeping dust from a floor. The Great Palace is not eternal, though it may feel that way for a moment. Earthquakes, fires, political shifts, and changing powers will reshape Crete. The Minoan world will not remain untouched. But the olive tree is less impressed by palace drama than humans tend to be. It stays on the slopes, silver leaves moving in the night air, roots gripping the ground. The jars may break, the tablets may harden, the writing may puzzle future minds, yet the oil, while it lasts, keeps glowing in cups, lamps, and memories. You stand at the edge of a storeroom as darkness gathers. The huge pithoi line the walls like sleeping giants. They hold the weight of harvest, the patience of groves, and the ambition of a sea-going island. The air is cool now, and the faint smell of oil lingers in the clay. In the courtyard beyond, a lamp burns quietly, its flame bending once in the breeze, then rising again. You step onto a sunlit street in the Greek world, where olive oil has become so ordinary that it is almost invisible, which is exactly how powerful things often behave. The morning air is warm, dry, and awake with sound. Sandaled feet slap softly against packed earth. A donkey snorts beside a cart. A fish seller calls out with the confidence of a man who believes volume improves freshness. From a nearby bakery comes the smell of warm barley bread, smoke, sesame, and oil heating in a shallow pan. You feel the city around you through the soles of your feet. Stone thresholds are smooth from generations of passing bodies. Dust clings lightly to your ankles. Somewhere, a door opens and releases the scent of crushed herbs, onions, and olives being prepared for a meal. Olive oil is everywhere here, not as a rare palace treasure, but as part of daily survival, beauty, sport, worship, medicine, and status. It is breakfast. It is bath time. It is lamplight. It is a prize. It is also, very conveniently, something people can argue about in markets, because apparently even liquid sunshine needs customer complaints. In a modest house, you watch a woman pour oil into a clay bowl. The stream is thin and green gold, catching the light as it falls. She mixes it with vinegar, herbs, or perhaps a little salt, then sets it beside bread, cheese, figs, and olives cured until their bitterness has softened into something earthy and rich. Greek diets vary by region and wealth, of course, but for many people, oil is a central source of flavour and fat. It makes humble food feel complete. A piece of coarse bread dipped into oil becomes softer, fuller, almost luxurious if you're hungry enough, which most people in history are more often than museum labels like to mention. You taste it and feel the slight pepper in the throat. The oil is not bland. It has bite, a grassy bitterness, a warmth that lingers. Around the table, conversation rises and falls. Someone complains about prices. Someone praises last year's harvest because memory improves harvest dramatically. A child reaches too eagerly for the bread and is corrected with a look that requires no translation. Beyond the household, the city depends on oil after sunset. Small terracotta lamps sit in niches and on tables, each with a pinched spout for the wick. When filled, they make darkness negotiable. You lean close to one in a quiet room. The flame is small, golden, and slightly smoky. The lamp gives off a faint warm smell, oily and dusty, with a thread of burnt wick. Its light trembles on plaster walls. It does not flood the room. It pulls gently, asking everyone to gather near. Reading, weaving, conversation, prayer, flirtation, and worry all happen inside this soft circle. Very little human life enjoys being interrupted by sunset, and olive oil politely helps. Mainstream history gives the Greek world one of its most famous oil scenes, the athletic body. You walk toward a gymnasium, where men train in open courtyards under pale light. The sound changes at once. You hear feet scuffing sand, sharp breaths, friendly insults, the thud of a jumper landing, the slap of hands during wrestling practice. The air smells of sweat, dust, sun-warmed skin, and oil rubbed over shoulders, arms, backs, and legs. Athletes anoint themselves with olive oil before exercise, then dust themselves with fine sand or powder. Afterward, they scrape the mixture away with a curved metal tool called a strigil. You watch one athlete draw the strigil down his forearm. It makes a soft scraping sound, intimate and slightly unpleasant, like grooming mixed with carpentry. Oil, sweat, and dust gather at the edge of the tool. His skin beneath is flushed and shining. This routine is practical, aesthetic, and social all at once. Oil helps clean the body, protects the skin, and displays the trained male form in a culture that takes athletics very seriously. Naturally, no one has invented the modern gym locker room yet, but the basic ingredients are already present: effort, pride, smell, and someone taking too long. Here is the quirky tidbit, and it is wonderfully odd. The scrapings from athletes' bodies, a mixture sometimes called gloios, were believed by some to have medicinal value. Yes, the oily sweat and dust scraped from a famous athlete could be collected and used as a kind of treatment. Ancient medicine had its own logic, and fame has always had strange side effects. A champion's body was thought to carry strength, heat, and excellence. So why not bottle the residue? It sounds suspicious now, but people have bought stranger health products with much nicer packaging. You move toward a festival, where olive oil becomes not just useful, but glorious. In Athens, winners at the Panathenaic Games received large painted amphorae filled with oil. These prize jars were decorated with the goddess Athena on one side and athletic events on the other. The oil came from sacred olive trees associated with Athena, whose gift of the olive was central to Athenian identity. The prize was valuable, both materially and symbolically. To win oil was to receive the city's blessing in liquid form, which is quite a dramatic way to say congratulations. In the crowd, you hear cheers rising like heat, dust hangs in the air, musicians play, vendors sell food. The smell is roasted meat, wine, sweat, incense, and oil warming under the sun. The city is alive with bodies pressing close. You feel the atmosphere become charged but still ceremonial. The amphorae gleam in rows, their black and red painted surfaces telling everyone that this oil is not common kitchen stock. It is civic honor. It is divine connection. It is money with a better shape. Historians still argue whether some descriptions of sacred prize oil should be understood as literal evidence for a tightly controlled supply from specific sacred trees, or as a symbolic language that made civic production seem divinely guaranteed. The difference matters. One reading emphasizes religious continuity and legal protection of special trees. Another highlights how cities transform ordinary agricultural wealth into sacred identity. The truth may sit somewhere between grove, law, ritual, and good old-fashioned civic branding. You wander out from Athens into the countryside where the grand language of festivals returns to ordinary labour. Olive trees stand on terraces and slopes, their roots gripping thin soil. Farmers prune carefully, harvest by hand, crush fruit with stone rollers, and press paste through baskets or mats. Some own many trees, others work small plots or labour for wealthier landholders. The Greek landscape is not one smooth picture of independent farmers humming happily under the sun. It contains debt, tenancy, slavery, family labour, local variation, and unpredictable weather. The olive tree may be noble, but the economy around it can still be very human, which means complicated and occasionally unfair. You stand in a pressing area where the floor is slick beneath your sandals. Crushed fruit gives off a thick green smell, sharp enough to wake you. Workers move slowly but steadily, their tunics stained at the hem. A lever press groans, fibres creak, liquid seeps into a collecting vessel. Someone wipes their hands on a cloth already far beyond rescue. The first oil is prized, cleaner and more fragrant. Other pressings may be used for lamps, ointments, or less refined purposes. Nothing is wasted if it can be helped. In a world where labour is costly and harvests uncertain, waste is not just foolish, it is rude. At the market, oil becomes language. Sellers praise its clarity, scent, age, origin, and suitability. Buyers sniff, taste, squint, and suspect fraud. Because shoppers in every era understand that a merchant's enthusiasm is not technically evidence. Some oils are local, some travel by ship from islands, coastal regions, or colonies. Greek expansion around the Mediterranean carries olive cultivation with it, especially into southern Italy, Sicily and beyond. Settlers bring habits, seeds, cuttings, tools, and tastes. The olive becomes part of a shared Greek identity, even as every region insists its own oil is best. This, too, feels eternal. You pass a sanctuary where oil enters a quieter register. A small flame burns near an image of a deity. Offerings are arranged with care. Oil may be poured, burned, perfumed, or used in preparations connected to worship. The smell of incense mingles with oil smoke and fresh flowers. Stone under your palm feels cool despite the heat outside. Voices lower here. Even the breeze seems to move more respectfully, although it is probably just trapped in the doorway. Greek thinkers also notice the olive. Agricultural writers discuss trees, soil, grafting, pruning, and yield. Physicians use olive oil in treatments, massage, diet, and wound care, with theories based on the humours and qualities of substances. Philosophers use the olive and its cultivation as examples when discussing nature, household management, or moderation. The oil's usefulness invites thought because it sits at the crossing point of body, land, economy, and ritual. It is difficult to separate practical life from ideas when the same substance feeds you, lights your room, shines on athletes, and honours a goddess. Night settles over the city. The day's heat lifts slowly from the stones. You hear distant conversation, a dog barking, the faint clatter of pottery being stacked. Inside a house. Someone trims the wick of a lamp. The flame steadies, soft and amber. A bowl of oil sits near bread for the morning. An athlete sleeps with sore muscles. A merchant counts jars. A farmer worries about rain. A priest checks that a sacred light does not fail. You realize the Greek world has made olive oil deeply social. It is no longer only a clever answer to hunger and darkness. It belongs to competition, citizenship, elegance, discipline, worship, and debate. It moves across skin, stone, bread, clay, and flame. It can be humble enough for a poor meal and grand enough for a victor's prize. It can smell like dinner, medicine, or a sanctuary. The lamp beside you flickers once, then calms. Its light rests on the wall like a small golden leaf. Outside, the silver trees stand under the stars, quiet and patient, while the city breathes around them. You stand at the edge of a Roman harbour, and the first thing you notice is the noise. Not a single grand sound, but 100 smaller ones woven together into a busy coastal murmur. Waves slap against stone quays, ropes creak under strain. Porters grunt as they lift heavy jars. Sailors shout in Latin, Greek, Punic, Egyptian, and several other languages that prove the Mediterranean has no interest in being tidy. Gulls wheel overhead, making comments no one asked for. The air smells of salt, tar, wet wood, fish, sweat, smoke, and olive oil sealed inside clay. It is not the fresh green scent of crushed fruit. This is oil as cargo, oil as empire, oil as paperwork. It has moved far from the quiet hillside into the heavy machinery of Roman supply. Around you, ships unload amphorae by the hundreds, their pointed bases packed in sand or straw, their shoulders marked with paint and stamps. Some jars have crossed from Hispania, especially the rich province of Baetica in southern Spain. Others come from North Africa, the Aegean, Syria, and other regions where groves cover hillsides and estates turn fruit into profit. You place your hand on one of the amphorae. The clay is sun-warmed, rough, and slightly gritty. Its curved body is thick and practical, built not for elegance on a dining table, but for surviving transport. Roman oil amphorae, especially the famous Dressel 20 type from Baetica, are broad, heavy vessels designed to carry large quantities of oil across sea routes. They are stamped by producers or workshops and often marked with painted notes about weight, origin, contents, or officials. These markings, called tituli picti, are a dream for archaeologists and probably a mild nuisance for the ancient people who had to write them neatly. Mainstream history is clear on one astonishing point: Rome consumed enormous quantities of olive oil. The city's population needed it for food, lamps, baths, religious practice, and daily care. Olive oil was a staple of Roman life, and the empire's roads, ports, ships, tax systems, and merchants helped move it on a vast scale. You can feel that scale in the harbour. The jars do not arrive as a charming local specialty. They arrive like grain, wine, metal, timber, and taxes, as part of the steady intake that keeps an imperial capital alive. You follow a line of workers away from the docks. The amphorae are carried, rolled, lifted, counted, and stored. Every movement is physical. Shoulders strain under the weight. Hands slip on dusty clay. A supervisor calls numbers in a voice sharpened by responsibility and, perhaps, a deep personal dislike of mistakes. The jars make dull thuds when set down. Somewhere, wax tablets are being checked. Somewhere else, a merchant is explaining that a delay was absolutely not his fault, which is one of the oldest traditions in shipping. Rome is hungry for oil because Roman life is full of surfaces that need it. In kitchens, it enriches sauces, vegetables, bread, and fish dishes. In lamps, it extends the evening. In baths, it belongs to cleaning and massage, rubbed into skin and scraped away with sweat and dirt. In temples, it burns or gleams in ritual settings. In workshops, it may serve practical uses. In medicine, it appears in ointments, treatments, and dietary advice. Olive oil becomes part of the texture of urban life, as present as stone, smoke, and conversation. You enter a crowded Roman street at dusk. The day's heat lingers between apartment blocks. Vendors are closing stalls. A baker sweeps flour from a threshold. A cook pours oil into a pan, and the scent rises with garlic, herbs, and something salty from the fish market. A lamp is lit in a shop front. Another glows in a cramped upstairs room. The flame trembles behind a clay spout, small but essential. Without all those shipments, the city would feel darker, poorer, rougher around the edges. In an apartment building, you climb narrow stairs worn smooth by countless feet. The wall brushes your shoulder with cool plaster. Inside a small room, a family eats a simple meal. Bread is dipped in oil. Beans are softened with it. A little oil is saved for the lamp, because dinner and light must negotiate like tired officials. Wealthier Romans may enjoy better grades, finer flavours, and scented oils, but even modest households understand its value. It is one of those substances that crosses social classes while reminding everyone that quality is never distributed evenly. Rome, naturally, invented many ways to be unequal. Now you travel in your mind toward Baetica, where the Guadalquivir River region produces oil in staggering amounts. Estates there are organized for export. Groves stretch across rolling land. Pressing facilities turn harvests into marketable liquid. Amphora workshops produce containers in great numbers. River transport carries jars toward ports. Then ships carry them across the western Mediterranean toward Rome. You hear the inland rhythm, pruning knives, carts, oxen, the grinding of the mills, the creak of presses, the splash of oil and water separating. The smell is green at first, then warm and dense in storage rooms. A landowner watches the process with interest, because every jar may mean profit, tax obligation, influence or survival in a competitive market. Roman agriculture is not simply rustic peace with a nice view. It involves slave labour, tenant farmers, hired workers, estate managers, weather risks, debt, contracts, and transport costs. A bad harvest can damage fortunes. A good one can build them. The olive tree may look serene, but the accounts beside it are wide awake. Here is the scholarly uncertainty, and it sits right in the middle of Roman power. Specialists continue to debate how much of Rome's olive oil supply was directed by state systems, military needs, taxation, and public distribution, and how much moved through private merchants responding to demand. The evidence is rich, but not always simple. Stamps and painted inscriptions identify places, weights, and names. Yet names can mean producers, shippers, officials, or contractors depending on context. The empire kept records, but not always the records modern minds most want, which feels slightly inconsiderate. You return to Rome and climb a strange hill made not of earth, but of broken jars. This is the greater Amphora mound, now known as Monte Testaccio, formed largely from discarded oil amphorae, many from Baetica. In antiquity, when oil was unloaded and transferred, empty amphorae were not always reused, especially because oil soaked into the clay and could turn rancid. So the vessels were broken and dumped in an organized way. Over time, the fragments built a hill, a whole artificial mountain of packaging waste. The Romans, it seems, discovered both global supply chains and the problem of what to do with the containers. Very modern of them, unfortunately. You walk across the mound carefully, sherds crunch underfoot, the clay is pale orange, pinkish, cream, and brown. Some fragments still show painted marks. The atmosphere is oddly quiet despite the city nearby. Each broken piece once held oil from a grove, a season, a pressing crew, a workshop, a ship. Now the pieces lie together like a fossil of appetite. If you touch one, it is dry, sharp-edged, and warm from the sun. The smell is mostly dust, but you imagine, faintly, old oil trapped in memory. The Roman military also needs oil. Soldiers stationed across the empire receive supplies according to rank, location, and logistics. Oil can travel with grain, wine, and other necessities to forts and frontier towns. You picture a camp near a river or in a dry eastern province. The evening air is cold, armor clinks, a cook ladles food into bowls, a lamp burns inside an officer's quarters. Oil links the capital with the provinces, the citizen with the soldier, the estate with the garrison. It is not glamorous, but neither is most of empire. Empire is often a series of inventories with flags attached. In the eastern Mediterranean, Roman Syria and neighbouring regions also produce oil. Ancient groves grow near villages, estates, and towns. Presses carved in stone show how local communities processed olives for home use, regional exchange, and broader markets. You stand near one of these presses as wind moves over dry hills. The air smells of limestone dust, wild herbs, and crushed fruit. A stone weight hangs from a lever. The machinery is simple in principle and demanding in practice. Human bodies supply attention. Animals supply power. Gravity does its slow work. The oil gathers, shining and patient. Roman taste distinguishes grades and origins. Some oils are better for eating, others for lamps or lower uses. Writers comment on agricultural methods, harvesting times, and storage. Pliny the Elder, Columella, and other authors preserve details about cultivation and quality. Though they write from particular social perspectives and not from the aching knees of every picker, their interest shows how seriously Romans took the olive. It was agricultural science, household management, cuisine, commerce, and identity. You pass through a wealthy Roman dining room where oil appears in refined dishes and scented preparations. Marble feels cool beneath your feet. Lamps glow against painted walls. Servants move quietly with bowls and plates. The oil here is strained, selected, perhaps praised for its origin. Conversation floats over couches, politics, lawsuits, poetry, investments, family alliances, complaints about the youth, a subject with heroic durability. The same substance feeding a worker's lamp can shine in elite dining, dressed in better pottery and more opinions. But Rome's greatness depends on repetition, harvest after harvest, jar after jar, ship after ship. The empire turns olive oil into movement, record, tax, supply, and habit. Its roads matter. But the sea is the great soft road, carrying cargo more efficiently than carts over mountains. You look again at the harbour as night settles. Torches burn, lamps appear in warehouses, the masts of ships stand black against a violet sky. Water rocks gently against hulls. Somewhere in the dark, a jar knocks softly against another, clay touching clay. The oil inside waits without drama. It will be poured into pans, lamps, baths, storerooms, shrines and ledgers. It will slide across bread, skin, bronze and wick. It will enrich the city and leave behind broken amphorae and a growing hill of evidence. The Romans do not merely use olive oil. They organize a world around moving it, counting it, taxing it, consuming it, and throwing away its containers with imperial confidence. You stand in the harbour's fading warmth and breathe in salt, smoke, clay, and distance. The sea is dark now. A lamp near the quay flickers in the wind, fed by oil that may have crossed half the known world. Its flame is small, but behind it stand groves, estates, ships, scribes, workers, merchants, soldiers, cooks, bath attendants, and an empire that keeps asking for more. You enter a quiet sanctuary where olive oil no longer feels like only a household necessity. It has become a language for things people cannot easily touch: blessing, purity, healing, authority, memory, and the strange human hope that the invisible might notice a small flame. The room is dim. Stone walls hold the evening cool. Your fingertips brush a carved doorway, and the surface feels smooth in some places, rough in others, worn by hands that came with requests, thanks, grief, fear, and probably a few very specific complaints about neighbours. The air smells of smoke, dust, wool, warm bodies, and oil burning slowly in shallow lamps. Somewhere, a voice murmurs a prayer. Somewhere else, a sandal scrapes across the floor. The atmosphere is hushed, not empty, but full in a low and careful way. In the ancient Mediterranean, olive oil often crossed the boundary between daily life and sacred practice. It could be used to anoint bodies, honour gods, feed lamps, prepare offerings, cleanse skin, and mark special people or special moments. This is one of the great mainstream facts of olive oil history across Jewish, Greek, Roman, and later Christian traditions. Oil became one of the most important ritual substances in the region. Water washed, wine gladdened, incense rose, but oil clung. It stayed on the skin, it shone, it carried scent, it made light. You stand near a lamp whose flame leans gently toward the draught. It burns from a wick laid into oil, and the glow is small but steady. In Jewish tradition, olive oil held a major place in sacred lighting and anointing. Pure olive oil was associated with the lamps of holy space, and anointing oil marked priests, kings, and sacred objects. The idea is beautifully physical. A person is not merely declared set apart. Oil is placed on the body. It touches the forehead, the hair, the hands. It leaves a trace. Authority becomes something felt on the skin. Imagine standing close enough to smell it. The oil is mixed with spices, perhaps myrrh, cinnamon, cassia, or other aromatics in traditions of sacred preparation. The scent is rich, resinous, sweet, and warm. It gathers in the throat. The hand that applies it moves slowly. A drop slides down the skin. The person receiving it feels the coolness first, then the warmth of the room, then the weight of being seen. It is gentle, but not casual. No one anoints someone the way one absent-mindedly butters bread, at least not without causing a theological incident. Oil also belongs to kingship. In many ancient Near Eastern settings, anointing could signal appointment, consecration, or divine favour. The physical act says, in effect, this person has crossed into another role. In the Hebrew Bible, the image of oil poured on the head becomes deeply tied to chosen leadership and sacred duty. The word Messiah itself comes from the idea of an anointed one. That is a powerful journey for tree juice. If we are being honest, a fruit is crushed, the oil is gathered, and eventually language uses it to speak about destiny. You move into a Greek sanctuary where the mood changes but the glow remains familiar. Outside, cicadas rasp in the heat. Inside, the shade smells of stone, incense ash, flowers, and a faint oily smoke. Olive oil may be offered to deities, used in lamps, applied to statues, or included in ritual care. Temples are not only places of belief, they are places of maintenance. Sacred objects must be cleaned, lamps must be filled, altars must be tended. The divine, apparently, also appreciates good housekeeping. In some places, cult statues were treated with oils, perfumes, and garments, not as decoration alone, but as part of keeping the sacred presence honoured. You can picture hands polishing a surface until it gleams, smoothing oil into wood, ivory, or stone, letting fragrance rise through the dim room. The statue does not move, yet people move around it with careful attention. Oil gives shine to stillness. It makes the sacred visible by catching the light. Now you step into the world of healing. A small room smells of herbs, linen, sweat, and oil warmed in our bowl. A healer rubs oil into sore limbs, mixes it with plant extracts, or recommends it as part of diet and care. Ancient Greek and Roman medicine used olive oil widely, especially in massage, skin treatment, wound care, and medicinal mixtures. Physicians wrote about different qualities of oils, different preparations, and different effects on the body. Some advice was practical, some was hopeful, some had the wonderful confidence of ancient medicine, which could explain the universe while misidentifying half the problem. The touch of oil matters here. You feel it spread across your wrist, smooth and cooling. It softens roughness. It catches dust and dirt. It makes the skin shine in a world of sun, wind, hard labour, wool clothing, and limited bathing by modern standards. That sensation is not small. Oil becomes comfort. It becomes care. It becomes the difference between cracked skin and skin that can keep working. There is a quirky tidbit hidden in old practices of divination and folk belief. In some Mediterranean traditions, drops of olive oil were placed in water to read signs, diagnose the evil eye, or sense hidden trouble. The way the droplets spread, sank, gathered or broke apart could be interpreted by someone who claimed to know what they were seeing. Was it official theology? Usually no. Was it science? Also no. Was it deeply human? Absolutely. When life is uncertain, people will ask almost anything to give them a hint, including breakfast ingredients floating in a bowl. You sit near such a bowl in a quiet house. The water is dark in the lamplight. A woman lets a drop of oil fall from her fingertip. It spreads across the surface, thin and trembling, shining like a tiny moon. The room smells of smoke, garlic, wool blankets, and dry herbs hung from the rafters. Everyone watches. The silence becomes so serious that even the household cat seems temporarily religious. The drop shifts. Someone whispers. Meaning is drawn from movement, whether or not movement ever agreed to be meaningful. A point of scholarly uncertainty rests beneath these rituals. Scholars continue to question how evenly religious oil practices were carried out across regions and classes, and how much surviving texts reflect official ideals rather than ordinary behaviour. A law code, a sacred text, a temple inventory, or a physician's manual can tell you what someone wanted recorded. It cannot always tell you what happened in every village, kitchen, shrine, or a sick room. The evidence is brightest near institutions and elites. Everyday faith often leaves softer footprints. You travel into early Christian communities, where olive oil takes on new sacramental and devotional meanings. Oil is used in anointing the sick, in baptismal rites, in lamps, and in the language of blessing. The body remains central. Faith is not only spoken, it is touched. Oil on the forehead, oil on the hands, oil shining near a tomb or altar. The material world becomes a partner in prayer. This is one reason olive oil survives so powerfully in religious memory. It does not stay abstract. It has weight, scent, texture, and light. In a small gathering space, you hear a psalm being sung softly. The melody is plain, almost rocking. A lamp burns near a wall. The air is close, warm with breath and wool. Someone has brought a jar of oil, stoppered carefully. When opened, it gives off a mild green fragrance beneath the stronger smell of smoke. A hand dips in. A mark is made. A blessing is spoken. You sense how the gesture gathers many meanings at once: healing, welcome, protection, dedication, hope. Oil also travels with mourning. Bodies may be washed, perfumed, and treated with oils according to local customs, beliefs, and family resources. The scent of oil and spices can soften the harshness of death, giving dignity to the person and work to the hands of the living. You do not need to make the scene dark or frightening. It is tender. A cloth is folded. A jar is opened. Someone weeps quietly. The oil glimmers on skin one last time. It says care does not stop simply because breath has gone. Yet oil is never only solemn. It appears in weddings, feasts, baby care, household blessings, and the little rituals people create because life is too strange to leave entirely unmarked. A newborn may be rubbed with oil. A guest may be welcomed with scented oil. A bride may be prepared with fragrance. A lamp may be lit for a holy day or a family memory. The same liquid that feeds a flame can also soften a child's feet. The sacred and the ordinary sit side by side, not as opposites, but as neighbours who borrow cups from each other. You step outside into a courtyard under stars. Night insects click in the dry grass. The stones release the last warmth of the day through your sandals. Somewhere nearby, olives are stored in jars, oil waits in a small vessel, and a lamp burns behind a curtain. The scent of smoke and green oil drifts through the air. A prayer fades. A dog sighs. The world feels held in a quiet amber circle. Olive oil becomes sacred because it behaves like a bridge. It comes from soil and tree, from labour and weather, yet it shines in sanctuaries. It feeds the body, yet speaks of spirit. It cleans, blesses, heals, honours, and illuminates. It is humble enough to sit beside bread and solemn enough to touch the head of a king. It can be measured in jars, taxed by officials, and still feel mysterious when a flame rises from it in a dark room. You watch the lamp for a while. The wick drinks slowly. The flame bends, steadies, and glows. Nothing grand happens, and that is part of its power. Sacred things do not always arrive with thunder. Sometimes they arrive as a drop on the skin, a fragrance in the air, a small light that refuses the dark, and a quiet human hand reaching for meaning. You walk into the medieval Mediterranean, and the world feels quieter at first, though not simpler. Dawn rests pale on a hillside of olive trees, their leaves silvering in the cool air. A rooster announces himself with the confidence of a minor official. Somewhere below, a mule bell knocks softly, irregular and sleepy. The earth smells of damp stone, wood smoke, manure, crushed thyme, and the faint green bitterness of olives stored in baskets near a low wall. The old empires have changed shape. Borders shift. Rulers rise with grand titles and nervous accountants. Villages endure. Monasteries gather land. Islamic estates refine irrigation and trade. And ports continue to breathe ships in and out with the tides. Through all this, olive trees remain rooted on terraces, slopes, and valley edges. They are not impressed by dynasties. They measure time in rings, pruning scars and harvests. Very rude of them. Really? To outlast so many people who put their faces on coins, you move along a narrow path between stone terraces. The walls are built from rocks pulled from the soil, stacked by hand without much softness in the arrangement. You run your palm across one. It feels cold, rough, and slightly damp from the night. These terraces matter. Medieval growers often worked difficult landscapes, holding thin soil on hillsides so trees could survive. Every wall is a little argument against erosion. Every tree is a bet that the rain will come, but not too violently, and that taxes will be annoying, but not ruinous. In a village, harvest begins with practical silence, then slowly fills with sound. Baskets scrape against doorways. Ladders are carried into groves. People call to one another from different trees. Olives patter onto cloth spread below the branches. The fruit is darker now, ripened toward purple and black. Your fingers grow cold at first, then sticky. The branches brush your cheek with a dry whisper. A child shakes a twig too hard and is corrected by 3 adults at once. Because agricultural criticism is a community activity, mainstream history places olive oil at the heart of medieval Mediterranean life, especially in Christian and Islamic regions where it remained important for cooking, lighting, medicine, soap making, textile work, ritual, and commerce. In many northern European areas, animal fats such as butter and lard were more common. But around the Mediterranean, olive oil retained a powerful role. It linked climate, agriculture, religion, and trade in a way few products could. It was food, fuel, and blessing, all in one jar, which is frankly showing off. You enter a monastery where oil has a disciplined, almost clock-like presence. The bell rings through the morning air. Low and resonant, its sound moves over cloisters, gardens, workshops, and storerooms. Inside, the stone floor is cool beneath your feet. The walls smell faintly of lime wash, wax, old parchment, and oil lamps that have burned through long nights of prayer and copying. Monastic communities used oil for lamps, cooking where rules permitted, healing balms, hospitality, and liturgical needs. A lamp in a chapel might be more than convenience. It could be devotion kept visible. In the scriptorium, the atmosphere is hushed. A monk bends over parchment, the nib of his pen making a tiny scratching sound. A lamp burns beside him, its flame steady but modest. The oil in it has travelled from grove to press to storeroom, then into this small clay or metal vessel where it allows letters to appear after sunset. You smell warm oil, wool robes, scraped parchment, and ink. Your fingertips hover near the page and feel the faint heat from the lamp. History, in this room, depends on agriculture in a surprisingly literal way. No oil, less light, fewer copied texts. The olive tree, quite uninvited, becomes an assistant librarian. Now you cross into land shaped by Islamic rule, where olive cultivation continues across parts of Al-Andalus, North Africa, Sicily, the Levant, and beyond. The air changes in the courtyard of an estate. Water runs in a narrow channel with a soft, bright sound. Citrus leaves release a sharp scent in the warmth. Olive trees grow near figs, vines, grain fields, and vegetable plots. Agricultural knowledge circulates through Arabic writings, local practice, and the movement of farmers, merchants, and scholars. Manuals discuss soils, grafting, irrigation, pressing, storage, and the qualities of crops. Not everyone reads such texts, of course. Many people learn from parents, neighbours, and the extremely persuasive teacher known as a failed harvest. In a rural mill, the olives are crushed beneath a turning stone. An animal walks in a slow circle, hooves dull against packed earth. The mill groans, wood creaks, paste gathers thick and dark, smelling grassy, bitter and alive. Workers layer it into woven mats. A press beam descends with heavy patience. Liquid runs into a basin oil, water, sediment, effort. The room is warm from bodies and work. The floor is slick in places, so every step asks for care. Your hand touches a wooden beam polished by use, and it feels smooth where generations have gripped it. Some medieval presses use screw mechanisms, others lever and weight systems, and local designs vary widely. Technology changes gradually, not like a sudden curtain lifting, but like people trying, borrowing, repairing, and improving whatever their landscape and wealth allow. A village press might serve many families. In some places, access to the mill is controlled by a landlord, monastery, town authority, or estate owner. The grower brings fruit, waits for a turn, pays a fee, and hopes the pressman does not treat the olives as if they personally offended him. A quirky tidbit comes from medieval oil and soap worlds. In some regions, old stories claim that certain soaps or medicinal oils could reveal moral purity, cure astonishingly broad complaints, or protect travellers from misfortune when blessed or prepared on special days. A bar of olive oil soap from a respected city could gain a reputation far beyond simple cleanliness. People might praise it as if it contained the wisdom of physicians, saints, and one very persuasive merchant. The practical truth was strong enough: olive oil makes excellent soap when combined with alkali. The extra claims were human decoration, and humans do enjoy decorating usefulness with mystery. You step into a soap workshop. The smell hits first sharp alkali, warm oil, ash, herbs, steam, and something clean but severe. Large vats stand over heat. Workers stir thick mixtures with long paddles. Their hands are rough, their sleeves stained, their faces shiny from warmth. Soap made with olive oil becomes important in places such as the Levant and later Mediterranean cities famous for fine soaps. It travels through trade routes as a value commodity. Cleanliness, medicine, commerce, and scent all gather in pale blocks left to cure on shelves. The medieval olive economy is also a tax story, which is less romantic but very awake. Rulers demand shares of harvests. Landlords collect dues. Religious institutions receive tithes, rents, or offerings. Market tolls follow goods from village to port. A jar of oil can pass through many hands before reaching a kitchen or lamp. You watch a clerk mark amounts on a tablet or parchment, his expression solemn, as if numbers are holy creatures. For the farmer, each mark may mean less oil for the household. For the ruler, it means revenue. For history, it means evidence, assuming the document survives fire, damp, insects, and the dangerous enthusiasm of later reorganizers. Here lies a serious uncertainty. Scholars debate how much medieval olive production expanded or contracted in different regions during periods of conquest, plague, climate stress, and political change. Archaeology, pollen studies, tax records, estate documents, and travellers' accounts do not always tell the same story. Some areas show continuity in cultivation, others suggest abandonment, recovery, or shifts toward different crops. The olive tree can survive neglect for a time, which complicates the evidence. A living tree does not always prove a thriving economy, and an empty record does not always prove an empty grove. You enter a small coastal market. Oil is sold in jars, skins, and smaller vessels. The air smells of salt fish, onions, wool, spices, leather, and fried dough. A merchant lets a buyer taste oil from a shallow spoon. The buyer squints with theatrical suspicion. The merchant insists it is pure, fresh, and from excellent trees. Naturally, medieval markets have no shortage of confidence. Adulteration exists, quality varies, and trust matters. Reputation can be as valuable as a full jar. A known producer, a respected monastery, or a famous town can command better prices. Nearby, a cook prepares a meal in a clay pot. Oil warms with garlic and greens, lentils simmer, bread rests under a cloth. The scent is humble and comforting. You sit on a low bench, and the wood presses hard against your legs. Smoke curls along the ceiling. The room is dim, but the lamp flame is a snuff. Food glistens. Someone tears bread. Someone mentions the weather with the gloomy expertise of all farmers everywhere. The oil turns plain ingredients into warmth that can be shared. In another house, a healer mixes olive oil with herbs. Rosemary, rue, bay, lavender, or local plants are bruised and steeped. A child with a cough is rubbed gently. An older woman massages oil into stiff hands. A traveller's cracked feet are treated near the hearth. Some remedies help through moisture, massage, warmth, and cleanliness. Others are carried by belief as much as chemistry. But the touch itself is real. The oil softens skin, releases fragrance, and gives the caregiver something to do when worry has no easy answer. You move through an olive grove at twilight. The medieval world is full of insecurity raids, feuds, shifting rulers, drought, locusts, plague, and taxes that arrive with remarkable punctuality. Yet the grove offers a different rhythm. Prune in season, graft with care, harvest when fruit is ready, press before spoilage, store away from heat and foul smells. Save enough for Lent, for lamps, for guests, for illness, for trade. The work is repetitive, but not dull. Every year brings a slightly different negotiation with rain, soil, labour, and luck. A church bell sounds in the distance. From another direction, you may hear the call to prayer rising over rooftops. Depending on the region beneath your feet, these sounds do not erase one another. They reveal a Mediterranean of many communities, languages, laws, and devotions, all familiar with the olive's value. The same tree can stand beside a monastery wall, an Islamic state, a Jewish household, a village press, a noble's farm, or a merchant's warehouse. Oil moves through difference without becoming neutral. Each community gives it meanings, rules, and uses of its own. Night settles slowly. The grove becomes silver black under the moon. Your fingers still smell faintly of fruit and smoke. A jar is sealed in a storeroom. A lamp is filled in a chapel. Soap cools in a workshop. A cook saves the last spoonful for tomorrow. The medieval olive tree stands between hardship and continuity, between sacred need and ordinary hunger. It does not make life easy, Nothing in this landscape is that generous, but it offers light, flavour, work, trade, medicine, and a reason to keep repairing the terraces when the stones fall. The leaves stir above you with a dry, soothing sound. Somewhere, oil drops from a ladle into a waiting lamp. The flame rises small and calm, and the hillside seems to breathe with it. You arrive in a Renaissance port just as morning opens over the water. The harbour is awake before the church bells finish their first clear notes. Sailors call from decks. Carts rattle over stone. A cooper hammers iron hoops round a barrel with slow metallic knocks. The sea smells of salt, weeds, wet rope, and fish. But behind it comes something warmer oil. Bread, garlic, citrus peel, soap, and spices sealed in wooden chests. The city rises from the waterfront in layers of pale stone. Brick, balconies, shutters, towers, laundry lines, and ambitious families pretending not to watch one another. Merchants walk quickly with folded letters and careful faces. Porters bend under loads. Clerks dip pens into ink and make numbers behave, or at least try to. Olive oil moves through this world as cargo, comfort, recipe, medicine, lamp fuel, and luxury. It is less dramatic than silk, less glittering than silver, less fragrant than cinnamon, but it is everywhere, which is usually how the useful things win. You follow a shipment being unloaded from a coastal vessel. The containers vary by region and purpose jars, barrels of skins and casks. A worker rolls a small barrel across planks, and the wood vibrates under your feet. Another man tests a seal, sniffing suspiciously. The oil inside may have come from Tuscany, Liguria, Provence, Sicily, Andalusia, Crete, or the Levant. It may be destined for kitchens, soap makers, apothecaries, lamps, monasteries, ships, or wealthy homes where someone will praise its delicacy, while eating far more than delicacy strictly requires. A mainstream historical fact sits plainly in the scene during the Renaissance and early modern Mediterranean. Olive oil remained a major commercial product, especially in cities tied to shipping, banking, food markets, textile production, soap making, and religious observance. Urban demand helped keep groves profitable, while merchants connected inland estates to ports and ports to distant buyers. In a city like Florence, Venice, Genoa, Marseille, or Seville, oil was not only part of dinner, it was part of account books, guild rules, household budgets, fasting regulations, and export strategies. You enter a merchant's counting room. It is cooler inside, shaded by shutters. The table is smooth from use beneath your palm. Parchment and paper lie in careful stacks. The smell is ink, dust, wax, wool cloth, and a little sharpness from an oil sample in a stoppered bottle. A clerk weighs, records, compares, and mutters softly. The merchant asks about origin, clarity, age, and price. He worries about leakage, spoilage, adulteration, pirates, customs fees, and relatives who want loans. Commerce may look elegant in portraits, but in daily life it has the emotional range of a sleepless tax collector. Oil quality matters. Fresh oil can taste green, peppery, almond-like, fruity, or pleasantly bitter. Poor oil can taste flat, sour, musty, or rancid. Renaissance buyers often judge by smell, colour, texture, and reputation. A trusted region could command loyalty. A respected estate could claim distinction. A careless seller could quietly stretch oil with cheaper fats or older stock, because fraud is another ancient crop that never fails. You watch a buyer dip a fingertip, rub it against his thumb, then smell it. The oil feels smooth and slightly warm from the room. He tastes it with a serious expression, as if listening to music only he can hear. In the market, food makes the oil feel more intimate. A cook pours it into a shallow pan. The first scent rises quickly, garlic softening, onions turning sweet, herbs waking under heat, fish sizzles, greens collapse into tenderness, bread waits nearby, rough crusted and warm. You hear knives chopping, baskets creaking, chickens objecting to existence, and vendors praising figs as if the figs personally paid them. Olive oil gives body to sauces, gloss to vegetables, richness to legumes, and comfort to bread. It is the quiet bridge between hunger and pleasure. Renaissance tables are shaped by class, region, and religion. Wealthy households may use fine oils in salads, sauces, fish dishes, vegetables, and special preparations. Poorer families stretch oil carefully, saving it for key meals and lamps. During Christian fasting periods, when meat and animal fats may be restricted, olive oil can become especially important, though rules differ by time and place. In some communities, whether oil is allowed during certain fasts becomes a serious question. Nothing says spiritual discipline like arguing carefully about what counts as fat. You move into an apothecary shop where the shelves are lined with jars, drawers, dried roots, minerals, seeds, and mysterious powders that look confident without explaining themselves. The room smells of lavender, vinegar, honey, resin, dried roses, stale smoke, and oil infused with herbs. An apothecary warms olive oil with rosemary, rue, chamomile, or other plants. He strains it through cloth, bottles it, labels it, and describes its virtues with professional calm. Oil carries medicines onto the skin and into the body. It softens, soothes, extracts, preserves, and perfumes. Here is the quirky tidbit, and it is delightfully odd. Some late medieval and Renaissance medical traditions included preparations such as scorpion oil, made by steeping scorpions in oil and applying or prescribing it for certain complaints, especially problems thought to involve stones or pain. The idea now feels alarming, like a pharmacy having a dramatic afternoon, but it made sense within older theories of sympathetic medicine and bodily balance. Olive oil was often the gentle carrier for ingredients that were much less gentle in reputation. One imagines the scorpion had no comment, which was probably for the best. Doctors of the period speak in the language of humours: hot, cold, wet, dry, balanced, excessive, suitable, dangerous. Olive oil may be praised or warned against depending on age, preparation, body type, climate, and complaint. Fresh oil can be considered nourishing or softening. Old rancid oil may be viewed as harmful, irritating, or fit only for lamps and rough uses. This is medicine before modern chemistry, but not without observation. People knew freshness mattered. They knew smell told a story. They knew the skin responded to touch, warmth, and fat. The theory may wander, but the hands sometimes understand. Now you enter an artist's workshop and the air changes again. Smells of wood shavings, glue, chalk, pigments, wet plaster, metal tools, smoke, and oils. A painter grinds colour on a stone slab. A young apprentice watches too closely and is told to stop breathing on the work, which is fair. Renaissance painting is famous for oil techniques, especially in Northern Europe and later Italy, though the drying oils most prized for paint are usually linseed or walnut rather than olive oil. Olive oil dries poorly, so it is not the hero of fine painting in the way a casual guest might imagine. Still, it belongs around workshops in lamps, cleaning, skin care, food, and sometimes technical experiments. History enjoys correcting assumptions gently, then charging admission. The glow of oil lamps matters to artists, scribes, goldsmiths, and anyone whose work continues past daylight. You stand beside a bench where a craftsman polishes metal under a small flame. The light trembles over tools. It makes gold leaf flash like trapped sun. It casts shadows beneath carved wood. The room is quiet except for breath, scraping, and the occasional hiss of someone realizing a mistake too late. Olive oil does not paint the masterpiece, perhaps, but it helps keep the room alive while hands work. Specialists remain divided over how much Renaissance olive oil demand was driven by refined cuisine and an elite taste, and how much came from less glamorous but massive uses such as lighting, soap making, textile processing, medicine, fasting needs, and maritime supply. Account books record purchases and shipments, but the final destination of every measure is not always clear. A barrel listed in a ledger might become dinner, lamp fuel, soap, ointment, or several things in sequence. The paperwork speaks but softly, and often with ink-stained ambiguity. You step into a soap-making quarter near the edge of town. The smell is strong hot oil, lye, ash, steam, sweat, and something clean emerging from something harsh. Workers stir vats with long paddles. Their hands are reddened, their sleeves rolled high. Olive oil soaps from Mediterranean regions become valued goods, used locally and traded beyond their place of origin. Blocks are cut, cured, stacked, stamped, wrapped, and shipped. Cleanliness becomes commerce. Humble wash can carry the name of a city across seas. In a wealthy household, olive oil becomes refinement. The dining room is lit by candles and lamps. Painted ceramics gleam on a sideboard. Linen brushes softly against your wrist. A servant brings a dish of vegetables dressed with oil and vinegar. Another sets down fish with herbs. The host mentions the oil's origin with studied casualness, which is how people brag when they have had practice. Guests taste and nod. Some truly notice the flavour. Others nod because nodding is safer than admitting they mostly taste garlic. Beyond the city walls, estates and farms supply this appetite. You walk through groves arranged on slopes where sunlight falls bright and clean. Pruning cuts show pale wood. Nets or cloths are prepared for harvest. The soil is dry underfoot and smells of dust, grass, and crushed leaves. Estate owners may invest in mills, presses, storage jars, and transport. Tenants, hired workers, servants, and labourers do the difficult seasonal work. The Renaissance may celebrate human dignity in art and philosophy, but the olive harvest still depends on bent backs, cold fingers, and someone carrying more than seems reasonable. As evening settles, the port softens, the counting rooms close, the market thins, a cook covers leftover oil carefully, an apothecary stops his bottles, a painter cleans his hands, a soap maker banks the fire. Ships rock in the harbour with quiet wooden sighs. Lamps begin to appear in windows one by one, their flames small and golden, their fuel part of a web of groves, merchants, recipes, remedies, workshops, and dreams of profit. You pause in the street as the city exhales into night. The stones beneath your feet still hold the day's warmth. From an open doorway comes the smell of bread dipped in oil. From another, the sharper scent of medicinal herbs. From the harbour, salt and tar drift inland. Olive oil in this age is commerce with a taste, refinement with a labour history, beauty with a price tag, and comfort poured from a clay jug by tired hands. It does not shout above the bells or the harbour noise. It simply shines wherever people need flavour, light, touch, and trade. You enter the age of iron presses, steam whistles, factory yards, and printed labels, and olive oil suddenly feels less like a village secret and more like an industrial question with a very expensive answer. Morning hangs grey over a mill town near the Mediterranean coast. The air is damp, carrying the smell of coal smoke, wet stone, sea salt, crushed olives, grease, and hot metal. Cartwheels grind over muddy streets. A dog barks from beneath a wagon. Somewhere inside a workshop, a machine coughs awake with a rhythm that sounds half miraculous and half irritated. You walk toward an oil mill where the door stands open. Inside, the old and the new share the same room uneasily. Stone wheels still wait near the pressing floor, massive and patient, their surfaces darkened by years of fruit paste. But beside them stand metal screws, hydraulic equipment, pipes, pumps, belts, and gears. Workers move with sleeves rolled and faces damp from heat. The sound is no longer only the slow groan of wood and stone. It is clanking iron, hissing steam, the slap of belts, the splash of liquid, and shouted instructions half swallowed by machinery. The olives arrive in sacks and baskets, some picked from nearby groves, others hauled from estates tied into widening commercial networks. They are dumped, sorted, washed, crushed, and pressed with increasing speed. The smell is intense. Green bitterness rises first, sharp enough to make your throat tighten. Then comes warm paste, wet fibre, old oil soaked into beams, smoke from a furnace, and the mineral scent of water running across stone channels. The floor is slick under your shoes. Your hand touches a metal rail, and it is cold where the morning has reached it, warm where workers have gripped it. A mainstream historical fact becomes obvious in the noise during the 19th and early 20th centuries. Olive oil production changed through mechanization, improved presses, centrifugal separation, railways, steamships, chemical testing, bottled branding, and expanding international trade. These changes did not arrive everywhere at once. Some villages continued using older presses for decades, even generations. But industrial methods altered scale, labour, hygiene, speed, and marketing. Oil could be produced faster, moved farther, tested more precisely, and sold with new claims about purity and origin. You watch a hydraulic press descend. It does not have the theatrical patience of the old lever beam. It applies force with quiet, controlled pressure, squeezing mats stacked with olive paste until liquid runs out in dark, glossy streams. Oil and water collect together, carrying bits of pulp. Workers guide the flow towards settling tanks or separators. In some mills, the separation still depends on time and gravity. In newer facilities, centrifuges begin to change the process, spinning liquids apart with a speed that feels almost rude compared with the tree's long patience. Outside, railway wagons wait near a depot. Barrels and tins are loaded for inland cities. Steamships carry oil across seas not only to traditional Mediterranean markets, but to Northern Europe, the Americas, and immigrant communities that want familiar foods from home. You stand on a pier where tin containers gleam in pale light. A ship's horn sounds low and mournful. The dock smells of tar, fish, coal dust, oranges, coffee sacks, wet rope, and oil packed for travel. Olive oil is becoming global, but not in a clean, simple way. It travels with migrants, merchants, colonies, cookbooks, pharmacies, factories, and rumours. In a city grocery, the oil sits in metal tins behind the counter. The labels are colourful groves, women in classical robes, golden fields, names of regions, medals from fairs, and words like pure, finest, superior, guaranteed. Some labels are honest, some are optimistic, some have the moral sturdiness of a paper hat in rain. The clerk measures oil into a customer's bottle, and the stream falls thick and yellow under the lamp. The smell is mild, perhaps too mild. The customer squints. Suspicion enters the room, wearing sensible shoes. Fraud becomes one of the great shadows of the industrial olive oil world. As demand rises and oils become commodities, some sellers mix olive oil with cheaper seed oils, nut oils, old oil, low-grade oil, or refined oils and sell the mixture as something finer. Adulteration is not new, but industrial trade gives it wider reach and greater reward. Scientific testing develops partly because trust alone is no longer enough. Chemists begin examining acidity, density, iodine values, saponification numbers, and other measures that sound less like dinner and more like a lecture trying to stay awake. You step into a laboratory. The mood changes sharply as no carts, no sacks, no shouting. Glassware catches the light. Shelves hold bottles with neat labels. The room smells of alcohol, acids, soap, dust, and faintly rancid samples. A chemist pours oil into a flask, adds reagents, warms, waits, watches. His cuffs are careful. His face is calm with the particular seriousness of someone who believes fraud can be bullied by numbers. Outside, merchants boast and buyers sniff. Inside, chemistry begins to speak in measurable facts. Here is the quirky tidbit, strange but true in spirit. In the age of expanding packaged goods, some sellers leaned so heavily on classical imagery that tins of ordinary oil looked as if Athena herself had personally supervised the press-in, checked the accounts, and approved the shipping crate. Labels showed temples, maidens, laurel wreaths, radiant suns, and impossible groves where no worker ever sweated or slipped on pulp. Advertising made olive oil ancient, pure, noble, and suspiciously photogenic. The oil inside might be excellent, or it might be having a small identity crisis. You visit a factory where tin containers are made and filled. Metal sheets rattle, machines stamp, fold, solder, and seal. The touch of a fresh tin is smooth and cool, with sharp corners that make you careful. Tins protect oil from light better than clear glass, and they travel well. Bottles also become important, especially for domestic markets and prestige sales. Packaging changes how people imagine the product. A jar from a local mill feels personal. A branded tin feels modern, distant, and official. It promises consistency, whether or not reality is feeling cooperative. The industrial age also changes taste. Refining techniques can remove strong odors, free acidity, and defects from lower-grade oils, producing a lighter, more neutral oil. For some consumers, this seems cleaner and more modern. For others, it loses character. The debate between strong traditional flavors and mild refined oils becomes part of a larger shift in food culture. You stand in a kitchen where a cook opens a tin and inhales. The oil smells clean, soft, almost shy. She pours it into a pan. It glimmers without much bitterness. Dinner will be good, but the wild green bite has been tamed. In a rural mill, older workers watch new machines with mixed feelings. Mechanization can reduce labor and increase yield, but it can also alter community rhythms. A village press is not only equipment, it is a seasonal gathering place where people exchange news, gossip, warnings, recipes, and judgments about everyone else's harvest. Industrial mills can be more efficient and less social. A machine does not care that your cousin's olives were late because his mule is lazy. A machine has no interest in gossip, which is clearly a design flaw. There is scholarly uncertainty here as well. Researchers still discuss how quickly mechanization improved average oil quality in different regions, since new equipment could speed processing and reduce spoilage. Yet poor storage, dirty containers, overheated paste, careless refining, and long transport could still damage the final product. Progress was uneven. A shiny machine did not guarantee good oil. A traditional mill did not automatically mean bad oil. Quality depended on timing, cleanliness, temperature, fruit condition, storage, skill, and market pressure. History rarely permits a simple victory parade for technology. You walk through a grove feeding this new world. The trees remain quiet, but the landscape around them has changed. Roads are better. Carts connect to rail lines. Large estates may plant more systematically. Some regions expand production for export. Others struggle with pests, drought, labour shortages, political upheaval, or competition from cheaper fats. The soil is dry and powdery underfoot. Leaves whisper overhead. Far away, you hear a machine in the mill, faint but steady, like a second heartbeat added to the countryside. Pests and plant diseases become urgent scientific matters. The olive fruit fly, fungal problems, and weather damage can ruin harvests or lower quality. Agricultural societies, governments, and local experts promote pruning methods, pest control, improved presses, and better storage. Pamphlets circulate, demonstrations are held, farmers listen, argue, adopt, resist, and compare results. Some advice helps, some advice sounds excellent on paper, and less excellent under a hot sun with 3 tired workers and a broken cart. In an international exhibition hall, olive oil appears among machines, textiles, wines, soaps, preserved foods, and national displays. The floor is polished. Gas lamps or electric lights shine above. Visitors move past stalls with gloved hands and curious faces. Bottles stand in neat rows, catching golden light. Judges taste, smell, score, and award medals. Producers use those medals on labels, creating a loop between quality, reputation, marketing, and ambition. Oil is no longer only valued by those who know the grove. It must now persuade strangers. Meanwhile, in working homes far from the Mediterranean, olive oil slowly finds new identities. Immigrant families use it in familiar dishes and teach children its smell as part of memory. Pharmacies sell it for health, skin, and digestion. Religious communities keep it for lamps or rites. Cooks unfamiliar with it may treat it as exotic, medicinal, or suspiciously foreign. Taste travels unevenly. A flavour beloved in one kitchen can seem strange in another until repetition makes it comforting. Evening falls over the industrial mill, the machines slow, the last workers rinse tools and sweep pulp. Wastewater runs dark into channels, carrying an odour that is earthy, bitter and heavy. The air cools. A lamp near the office flickers beside ledgers filled with orders, debts, weights, names, destinations, and complaints. Outside, barrels wait under tarps, tins are stacked in crates. A railway whistle sounds in the distance, thin and lonely. You stand between the grove and the factory, between silver leaves and iron gears. Olive oil has entered an age of measurement, branding, chemistry, machinery, and global trade. It is still fruit turned into light and flavour, but now it must survive labels, laboratories, shipping schedules, adulteration scandals, and changing tastes. The tree remains patient. Humans add engines, invoices, medals, and opinions. Naturally, a drop of fresh oil falls from a spout into a metal can. It makes a soft, final tap. In that tiny sound, you hear the old rhythm inside the new one harvest. Pressure, separation, storage, sale. The night air smells of smoke and green fruit. The mill door closes. The oil waits in darkness, sealed for a journey its tree will never see. You step into the 20th century, and olive oil enters a world of supermarkets, doctors, glossy cookbooks, nutrition headlines, television kitchens, migration, identity, and labels that somehow manage to sound both scientific and poetic. The grove is still there, silver leaves flickering in dry light, but now the oil must speak to people who live far from the trees. It must sit on shelves beside corn oil, soybean oil, butter, margarine, and every confident new product promising convenience, health, and a very modern kind of happiness. You begin in a Mediterranean village at harvest time. The morning's cold enough to pink your fingers. Nets lie under the trees like faded green shadows. Plastic crates wait beside stone walls. A tractor coughs awake, disturbing the quiet with a rattle that makes the sparrows reconsider their life choices. The air smells of wet leaves, diesel, earth, coffee from a nearby kitchen, and olives bruising as they fall. You reach into a crate. The fruit is firm, cool, and smooth. Some green, some purple-black, each one holding a small bitterness that must be coaxed into richness. The work is still physical. People bend, lift, sort, and carry. Mechanical shakers may grip the trunk and send it trembling through the branches, so olives rain down in a soft, rapid patter. In other groves, families still use hand rakes and long poles, especially where terrain is steep or trees are old and irregular. You hear the zip of rakes through leaves, the thump of crates stacked in a trailer, the murmured argument about whether this year's fruit is better than last year's. It always is. According to someone, it never is, according to someone else. Agricultural debate is timeless. A mainstream historical fact shapes this age in the second half of the 20th century. Olive oil became strongly associated with the Mediterranean diet and with ideas of heart health, especially through nutrition research that compared eating patterns across different populations. Olive oil moved from regional staple to global health symbol. It appeared not only in kitchens, but in clinics, magazines, diet books, and public health conversations. Suddenly, a product long valued for flavour, light, and tradition became famous for monounsaturated fat, antioxidants, and wellness. The olive tree, one suspects, did not ask to become a lifestyle influencer. But here we are. You enter a modern mill and it feels cleaner, faster, brighter. Stainless steel replaces much of the old wood and stone. The floor is washed, slightly wet under your shoes. Fluorescent lights hum overhead. Conveyor belts carry olives toward washing machines and crushers. The smell is astonishingly green, like cut grass, artichoke, apple skin, and rain on dust. When the olives are crushed, the aroma deepens, peppery and alive. The paste moves through enclosed systems. Machines knead it gently, then centrifuges spin oil away from water and solids. The sound is mechanical but controlled motors purring, pumps clicking, metal vibrating softly. Fresh extra virgin olive oil pours from a spout in a narrow stream. It is cloudy at first, glowing green gold under the light. You hold a small cup in your hands. It is warm from the fresh pressing. You smell it. Grass, tomato leaf, almond, herbs, and something almost floral rise together. You sip. The taste begins smooth, then bitter, then pepper catches at the back of your throat. You cough once, politely betrayed. A producer smiles because that peppery sting can signal freshness and phenolic compounds. Very charming, really. That a healthful sign may feel like the oil has gently heckled your throat. In cities across the world, olive oil becomes aspirational. Cookbooks praise it. Chefs drizzle it over grilled vegetables, fish, pasta, beans, soups, and salads. Television cooks pour it with dramatic freedom, as if the bottle has no price and gravity is a sponsor. In immigrant neighbourhoods, olive oil carries memory. A Greek family in Melbourne, an Italian family in New York, a Lebanese family in Sao Paulo, a Spanish family in Buenos Aires, a Moroccan family in Paris each may keep a tin, bottle, or can in the kitchen, not as fashion, but as continuity. The smell of oil warming with garlic can make distance feel smaller. You stand in a supermarket aisle. The atmosphere is strangely bright, almost theatrical. Glass bottles line the shelves, green, clear, square, round, tall, squat, elegant, plain. Labels promise extra virgin, cold extracted, first press, organic, estate grown, single origin, robust, mild, fruity. Somewhere medals, somewhere maps, somewhere vague rustic imagery involving a farmhouse that may or may not exist outside graphic design. You pick up a bottle. The glass is cool and smooth. Light catches the oil inside, turning it gold. It seems simple, but the label is doing a lot of talking. Modern regulations and grading systems become central to olive oil's identity. Extra virgin olive oil is expected to meet chemical standards and sensory standards, meaning it must be made without refining, have low free acidity, and show no serious taste defects under professional assessment. Virgin, refined, and blended categories serve different markets. Protected origin labels in Europe and similar systems elsewhere try to defend regional names and traditional methods. Standards help honest producers, guide consumers, and provoke arguments. Because wherever quality rules exist, someone will test the edges. Here is the scholarly uncertainty of the modern age. Historians and food scholars still debate whether the worldwide rise of olive oil is best understood as a triumph of nutrition science, a result of Mediterranean cultural branding, a consequence of migration and globalization, or a revival shaped by premium food marketing. The answer is probably not one thing. Research mattered, chefs mattered, immigrant kitchens mattered, tourism mattered, trade groups mattered. The desire to buy a bottle that feels ancient, healthy, and slightly glamorous also mattered. Human beings rarely purchase only calories. We purchase stories, status, memory, hope, and sometimes a label with a nice tree on it. A quirky tidbit appears in modern tasting culture. Professional olive oil tasters often warm samples in small blue glasses, not clear ones, because colour can mislead judgment. The blue glass hides whether the oil looks golden or green, forcing the taster to focus on aroma and flavour. You hold one of these little glasses in your palm, warming it gently. It feels smooth, round, almost ceremonial. You cover the top, swirl, uncover, and inhale. The room smells of apples, grass, leaves, nuts, and pepper around you. Trained tasters sniff with grave concentration. It is peaceful, but also faintly funny, because everyone looks as if they are listening to secrets from a salad. Fraud does not disappear in the modern age. It becomes more technical, more international, and more embarrassing when exposed. Some oils may be mislabeled, blended deceptively, deodorized, or sold as higher quality than they deserve. Investigators use chemistry, sensory panels, supply chain audits, and traceability systems to defend authenticity. Producers who care about quality worry about light, heat, oxygen, harvest timing, storage tanks, bottling dates, and transport conditions. The consumer sees a bottle. Behind it stands a battlefield of freshness. You visit a high-end restaurant where olive oil has become part of performance. The table is set with white cloth, heavy cutlery, and small dishes. A server pours oil into a shallow bowl. The stream is slow, green, and glossy. Bread arrives warm, its crust crackling under your fingers. You dip it, taste, and feel fruitiness, bitterness, salt from the bread, and a peppery finish. The room smells of lemon peel, roasted vegetables, wine, polished wood, and raincoats drying near the door. Olive oil here is not just cooking fat. It is an opening gesture, a mood, a small edible welcome. In another kitchen, quieter and more ordinary, someone pours a modest spoonful into a pan for beans. A radio murmurs. A child does homework at the table. The oil warms with onion until the room smells soft and sweet. This is not luxury branding, and this is dinner. Olive oil's modern story is not only chef culture and health advice. It is also weekday food, family habit, practical nourishment, and the bottle that gets refilled before anyone admits it is empty. The 20th century also brings pressure. Industrial agriculture can increase production, but it may strain landscapes, intensive groves, irrigation demands, soil erosion, pesticide use, and monoculture raise concerns. At the same time, many growers protect old terraces, ancient trees, dry farming traditions, and biodiversity. Some producers revive heirloom varieties. Others invest in super high-density plantings that can be harvested by machines. The modern olive world contains romance and efficiency, heritage and spreadsheets, birdsong and export targets. The tree stands patiently while humans create another complicated arrangement around it. You walk through a grove of ancient trees marketed to visitors. Their trunks are enormous, twisted into hollows and ridges like sleeping creatures. Tourists touch the bark, take pictures, taste oil, and buy bottles wrapped in tissue. The air smells of dust, lavender, sun-warmed stone, and distant sea. Guides tell stories of trees hundreds or perhaps more than 1,000 years old. Exact ages can be difficult to prove, but the impression is powerful. You place your palm against the bark. It is rough, warm, and alive with small shadows. The tree becomes memory you can touch. As night gathers in a modern apartment, the bottle sits near the stove. City sounds drift through the window scooters, voices, elevator doors, a dog barking from a balcony. Someone tears lettuce, slices tomatoes, opens bread, and uncaps the oil. The scent rises gently. A meal begins. It is simple, but it carries hillsides, mills, ships, laboratories, doctors, merchants, grandmothers, chefs, labels, arguments, and weather. Olive oil has become liquid gold again, not because everyone agrees what it means, but because it can mean so many things at once. Health, home, flavor, region, class, memory, authenticity, care. It can sit in a plastic bottle in a busy family kitchen, or in a dark glass bottle on a tasting counter. It can be debated by scientists, praised by chefs, protected by farmers, imitated by fraudsters, and poured by tired hands over warm bread at midnight. You watch the oil settle in a dish, shining under the kitchen light. Outside, the city keeps moving. Inside, the room softens around the smell of food. The bottle is ordinary enough to miss, precious enough to guard, and old enough to make the modern world feel briefly rooted. You stand in a modern kitchen while evening gathers at the window, and the bottle of olive oil waits near the stove as if it has always belonged there. The glass is dark green, cool against your palm, and faintly slick around the cap where someone poured too quickly and then pretended not to notice. Outside, traffic hums. Inside, a pan warms with a soft metallic tick. The room smells of onions, bread, lemon peel, and rain drying from coats hung by the door. You tip the bottle and the oil falls in a slow thread. Gold in the light, it spreads across the pan with a quiescent shimmer. A small sound rises, not quite a sizzle yet, more like the kitchen clearing its throat. Garlic follows, and suddenly the air changes. It becomes warmer, rounder, familiar. That is the trick of olive oil in the present day. It can seem simple, almost modest, yet every spoonful carries agriculture, chemistry, commerce, religion, myth, labour, law, taste, medicine, and memory. Not bad for a fruit that still tastes personally offended when eaten raw from the tree. You step away from the counter and into a grove at harvest time. The present does not erase the old landscape. It adds new sounds to it. Plastic crates scrape across the ground. A phone buzzes in someone's pocket. A tractor idles near a stone wall. Yet the leaves still whisper with that dry silver sound, and the soil still smells of dust, herbs, and weather. The olives are cool in your fingers. Some are green and tight, others dark and softening. When you press one lightly, it gives off a bitter green scent, sharp enough to wake the senses. A mainstream fact of today's olive oil world is that it remains one of the defining agricultural products of the Mediterranean, while also being produced in many other places, including California, Australia, Chile, Argentina, South Africa, and parts of the Middle East beyond the old famous centres. The crop has become global, but it still depends on remarkably local things. variety, soil, rainfall, pruning, harvest timing, milling speed, storage, and care. A bottle may travel across oceans, but its character begins with weather on a particular hillside. You walk through an olive mill where the latest harvest is being processed. Stainless steel shines under bright lights. The air is chilly, clean, and alive with fragrance. Conveyor belts carry washed olives into crushers. The machines hum with an even, steady confidence. Fruit becomes paste. Paste becomes liquid. Liquid separates into oil, water, and solids. The smell is green tomato, cut grass, almond skin, artichoke, pepper, and wet leaves. A worker opens a small valve, and fresh oil runs cloudy and luminous into a tasting cup. You warm the cup between your palms. It feels thin and smooth, almost delicate. You inhale. The oil does not smell like fat. It smells like a field after rain, like green stems snapped between fingers, like something alive being translated. You sip, drawing in a little air as tasters do. First comes fruitiness, then bitterness, then a peppery catch at the back of your throat, just enough to make you cough once and look betrayed. The miller smiles. Fresh oil has a personality. Sometimes it is gentle. Sometimes it marches in wearing boots. In tasting rooms now, people speak of cultivar, harvest date, polyphenols, defects, filtering, and storage temperature. They compare early harvest oils with riper ones. They argue over bitterness and balance. They hold blue tasting glasses so colour will not fool them. That is the quirky tidbit of this quiet modern ceremony. Experts often hide the colour on purpose, because a bright green oil may not be better than a golden one, and human eyes are easily flattered. We are, as a species, very vulnerable to pretty liquids, yet the story is not only premium bottles and careful tasting notes. You enter a small apartment where dinner is being made after a long day. A spoonful of oil warms with tomatoes. Beans soften in a pot. Bread is torn by hand. A child steals a piece and dips it before anyone can object. The table is not elegant, but it is alive. Olive oil gives gloss to vegetables, comfort to soup, richness to grains, and a little ceremony to plain bread. It asks for no marble counter. It does not require a famous chef hovering nearby saying just a drizzle while using half a bottle. In another kitchen, someone uses olive oil because a doctor recommended it. In another because a grandmother did. In another because a cookbook made it fashionable. In another because it is simply what has always been there. This is one reason olive oil survives so well in modern life. It can be health food, heritage food, luxury food, everyday food, an emergency dinner solution all at once. It sits beside salt and bread, ordinary but not empty. The modern bottle also carries tension. Quality can be protected, but it can also be imitated. A label may promise hillsides, purity, ancient groves, and family devotion, while the supply chain behind it is less poetic and more crowded with brokers, tanks, blends, and shipping documents. Producers who care deeply about freshness worry about oxygen, light, heat, and time. Consumers often look for a harvest date, a dark container, a trusted producer, and a flavour that still feels awake. Olive oil may be ancient, but buying it can feel like solving a tiny mystery in the grocery aisle. There is still uncertainty among scholars and food historians about how future generations will define authenticity in olive oil. Some argue that tradition belongs to old varieties, hand harvesting, stone terraces, and small mills. Others point out that modern machines can produce exceptionally clean oil, reduce delays, and protect flavour. Some celebrate heritage landscapes. Others focus on sustainability, efficiency, and climate resilience. The debate is not simply old against new. It is a quieter question what must remain for olive oil to still feel connected to the hands, trees, and places that made it meaningful. You move into a grove under a hotter sun, where that question feels urgent. Climate change presses on olive country through drought, heat waves, unpredictable rain, wildfires, pests, and water stress. Some growers adapt with new irrigation methods, drought-resistant varieties, soil cover, regenerative practices, and careful pruning. Others struggle to keep old terraces alive. The air is dry enough to taste, leaves curl slightly in the heat, dust sticks to your ankles. A farmer looks up at the sky with the expression of someone negotiating with a very powerful landlord. Ancient trees still stand in many landscapes, but they are not museum pieces, they are living workers. Their trunks twist into hollows and knots, rough beneath your fingers, warm on the sunlit ridges and cool inside shaded grooves. Birds nest in them. Insects move through the bark. New shoots rise from old wood. A tree may be sold as ancient, photographed as romantic, praised as sacred, and still need pruning at the right time. Reverence is nice. Maintenance is better. You find myth still clinging to the leaves. People speak of peace, wisdom, victory, purity, and long life. A branch on a flag, a crown in an old image, oil in a blessing, a lamp in a window, a bottle on a kitchen shelf. The symbols keep changing shape. Some are grand, some are domestic. Olive oil has always been good at slipping between worlds. It can stand beside gods and accountants, athletes and cooks, doctors and merchants, emperors and children with bread in their hands. At the table, you pour a little oil into a shallow dish. It gathers in a bright pool, reflecting the overhead light. You dip bread into it. The crust scratches your fingertips. The inside is soft and warm. The oil soaks in, turning the bread glossy and fragrant. You taste fruit, salt, grain, and pepper. For a moment, history becomes very small, not because it has lost importance, but because it has become touchable. It is there in the hand, the mouth, the lamp glow, the shared plate. You think of the labour hidden inside every bottle, the pruning done in cold months, the anxious watching of blossoms, the worry over rain, the shaking of branches, the crates lifted into trucks, the mill cleaned before dawn, the tanks sealed against air, the labels applied, the shop shelves stocked, the cook reaching for the bottle without making a speech about civilization, which is probably healthy. Most of life's deep continuities do not announce themselves. They sit quietly near the stove. The pan on the modern burner is ready now. You add greens, and they hiss softly as they meet the oil. Steam rises with a mineral, earthy smell. The room becomes warmer. The window reflects a small domestic scene, your hand holding a wooden spoon, a bottle beside the stove, a dish waiting on the counter. The world outside may be fast, bright, restless, and full of screens, but this little ritual is slow. Pour, warm, stir, taste, share. And now the evening softens. The kitchen grows quieter, the last sounds settling into the walls like gentle rain. The oil in the dish shines with a mild golden patience. No longer a product, no longer an argument, only a small pool of light. You let your shoulders drop, you breathe in bread, herbs, and warm stone from a memory you did not know you carried. The grove becomes distant and near at the same time. Silver leaves moving under a darkening sky. Roots holding the earth without hurry. One drop, one flame, one meal, one hand passing bread to another. The story loosens its grip. The room fades at the edges. The night opens softly. And somewhere, beyond the window, the old trees keep their quiet watch.